Hello, today's lecture discussed girls and juvenile delinquency. And we saw in the women and drugs lecture that girls are more likely to join gangs because of a male or brother, boyfriend, or male presenting person is part of the gang. So the rise of juvenile courts and juvenile treatment courts and family treatment courts. So we see that problem-solving courts that was discussed in the Women and War on Drugs lecture tend to try to divert juveniles from serving any jail time or being incarcerated. So what we know before is children who were poor were often discriminated against. If you have read Charles Dickens and The Poorhouse, that was like a real thing where if you were poor and couldn't pay your bills, then you would go into the poorhouse until you could pay your bills, and that included children sometimes. They were often removed from unfit homes, just like today, and the progressive era was coined as the Child Savers Movement. And so from the Child Savers Movement, we increased to juvenile treatment courts or juvenile courts. For example, King County has a juvenile treatment drug court that tries to deter juveniles from being, or tries to encourage sobriety and reduction of addiction. So juvenile court was responsible for hearing court cases concerning children who committed actual crimes, status offense cases, and cases of abuse and or neglect. Also in DeKalb County, we used to have an early risk assessment program, which is for juveniles who stole something from Walmart. Their first offense, they committed a crime, but it's a first offense, and were so they would be assessed and go through a program to determine whether they need more counseling, do they need more resources. So a person who has a solid family, hasn't had any counseling before, their punishment might be write a letter of apology to the store, whereas a juvenile who has not a solid family, has some kind of drug abuse in there, etc., may be asked to perform some more resources such as more counseling or get a job or things like that. So we have age consent campaign, which was to help young girls from being preyed upon by men. This campaign changed the legal age of sexual consent to 16 or 18, depending on what state you are in. For example, the state of Texas, you're an adult at age 17. The state of Illinois, you're an adult at age of 18. It contributed to net whiting, whereby there was an increase in female offenders being brought into the system, and it's a method of controlling female sexuality, because if you can't consent if you're not under the age of 18, then a person who is exploring their female sexualities may be like, okay, I don't know what's going on, I would like to explore this more, but if they're exploring with the person who's over the age of 18, then they cannot give consent. So what is the sexual double standard? This is the idea that we've discussed in class before, where men can have potentially lots of sexual partners, or at least talk about lots of sexual partners, and women cannot have as many sexual partners. So it's like when men say things like bros before hoes, the assumption is that women who are experiencing female sexualities are exploring that, they have a double standard, and women and girls can't do that. So what is the example of a violent girl? The media has been instrumental in portraying a bad girls due to family-based violence. A lot of times girls will be violent. Law enforcement and other services to help with the issue of juvenile crime. And school-based violence is also increasing. These cases are being automatically referred to law enforcement by school administrators. And then we see that an increase in the number of suspensions in schools. So can you all think of an example from the media of a violent girl? So we also have technical violations. Status offenses are offenses that are committed by youth. So, for example, they're on probation and they're caught hanging out with a person who's also another juvenile who's also on probation. So that could be a status offense, and then they would be picked up, could be picked up for that status offense. So status offenses are truancies, not showing up to school on time, being out past curfew, running away from home, or consumption of alcohol or other drugs. So do we have anything in DeKalb County to reduce technical violations? Well, yes, we have the ERAP program, or we used to have the ERAP program. We have other diversion programs within the DeKalb County that tries to reduce the number of status offenses. But at some point, if the juvenile has so many status offenses, they're arrested anyway, because it seems like the program is not working for them, or they're not working the program. So other technical violations, whites are less likely to be adjudicated for status offenses than non-whites. We found in DeKalb County that once a juvenile reaches the juvenile level court, they're actually whites and juveniles of color are equally likely to be in the court system. As prior to that arrest, disposition, station disposition, knowing the family, all these kind of things before that reaching juvenile court, where there are changes related to race and gender. So bootstrapping is a term used to describe the increased incarceration of girls for status offenses. In today's age, for example, in DeKalb County, they're trying to decrease incarceration for both boys and girls related to status offenses. So risk factors for delinquency include things like family relationships. So if they don't have a positive family relationship, then that could include delinquency. If there has been trauma or victimization in the family's relationship, that can increase delinquency. Peers, if juveniles are hanging out with peers that are delinquent, they're more likely to be delinquent. If they're falling behind in school, more likely to be delinquent. By the grade 3, if you're not reading by grade level 3, you have an increased chance of law enforcement contact in reading, so because you don't read as well. Substance abuse, mental health, and cognitive health are all factors in increasing delinquency. So what programs exist in DeKalb County to reduce the risk factors? So there's Youth Service Bureau. There is Ben Gordon. There's other high school programs that's trying to decrease substance abuse and mental health abuse, or mental health cognitive behavior problems. There is teachers, etc., teachers YMCA, staff and mentors, etc., who are trying to have more positive social behavior, like working out or being in a club or things like that, that would reduce the risk factors for delinquency. So what examples do you have of gender-specific programming? This is coming from your textbook, and so you should think about that. This would be a great question for the final exam.